Welcome to Theology Talks. Today, we journey back to the medieval era to delve into the complex web of motivations behind the Crusades. From papal ambitions and imperial strategies to the personal ambitions of knights and commoners, these campaigns were influenced by diverse factors. Discover why tens of thousands left everything to reclaim the Holy Land and how their legacy echoes through history. Join us as we unravel the causes and goals of the Crusades, beginning with the pivotal First Crusade that set the stage for centuries of fervent endeavor. Let's dive in. The Crusades were a series of military campaigns organized by Christian powers to reclaim Jerusalem and the Holy Land from Muslim rule. Between 1095 and 1270, there were 8 officially recognized crusades, along with numerous unofficial ones. Each had varying degrees of success and failure, but in the end, the goal of keeping Jerusalem and the Holy Land in Christian hands was not achieved. Despite this, the crusading spirit persisted into the 16th century. This video explores the motivations of crusaders, from the Pope to the humblest warrior, especially focusing on the first campaign, which set the pattern for those that followed. Who wanted what in the Crusades? The reasons behind the Crusades are complex, with multiple contributing factors. As historian J. Riley Smith points out, it cannot be stressed enough that crusades were arduous, disorienting, frightening, dangerous, and costly for those involved, making the enduring enthusiasm for them over centuries difficult to explain. An estimated 90,000 men, women, and children from all social classes were convinced by political and religious leaders to take part in the First Crusade, 1095 to 1102. Understanding their diverse motivations, as well as those of the leaders of the time, is key to explaining why the crusading ideal took hold. While we may never fully know the personal thoughts of individuals, we can summarize the general reasons for the widespread support and action of key figures and social groups during the Crusades. The Byzantine Emperor aimed to reclaim lost territory and defeat a rival state threatening the empire. The Pope sought to strengthen the papacy's influence in Italy and assert dominance as the head of the Christian Church. Merchants were motivated by the opportunity to control key trading centers currently under Muslim rule and profit from transporting crusaders to the Middle East. Knights fought to defend Christianity, protect believers and holy places, follow the principles of chivalry, and seek material wealth in this life while gaining favor in the next. The Byzantine Empire. The Byzantine Empire had long controlled Jerusalem and other Christian holy sites, but in the late 11th century, they lost these lands to the Seljuks, a Turkish tribe. The Seljuks had already made several raids into Byzantine territory and, in 1071, shocked the empire by defeating the Byzantine army at the Battle of Manzikert in Armenia. They even captured the emperor, Romanos IV Diogenes. Although he was eventually freed for a huge ransom, Romanos had to surrender key cities like Edessa, Hierapolis, and Antioch. This defeat stunned Byzantium, sparking a power struggle for the throne, which Romanos' return failed to resolve. Many commanders in Asia Minor abandoned their posts to pursue claims to the throne in Constantinople. In the meantime, the Seljuks capitalized on the empire's military instability. By 1078, they established the Sultanate of Rum, with their capital at Nicaea in northwest Asia Minor, and by 1087, they had seized control of Jerusalem. Several Byzantine emperors came and went, but some stability returned during the reign of Alexios I Komnenos, 1081 to 1118. Although a veteran of Manzikert, Alexios couldn't stop the Seljuks. His territorial losses were partly due to weakening the military provinces in Asia Minor, fearing the rise of powerful theme commanders. Instead, he focused on reinforcing Constantinople's garrisons. Additionally, Alexios distrusted his Norman mercenaries, given their control of Sicily and recent attacks on Byzantine Greece. In 1095, Alexios appealed to the West, hoping European leaders would help drive the Seljuks out of not just the Holy Land but also Byzantine lands they had conquered. The Christian sword could safeguard the Byzantine crown. The Pope Urban II, 1088 to 1099, received Alexios' appeal in 1095, though it wasn't the first time the Byzantine emperor sought papal aid. In 1091, Urban had sent troops to assist Byzantium against the Pecheneg in the northern Danube region. In 1095, Urban saw various reasons to help again. A crusade would enhance the papacy's prestige by leading a unified Western army and reinforce its power in Italy, which had been threatened by the Holy Roman Emperors in the previous century. Urban also sought to reunite the Western, Catholic, and Eastern Orthodox churches, with himself as head over the Patriarch of Constantinople. Since 1054, the churches had split over doctrinal and liturgical disputes. The Crusades could appeal to the masses by highlighting the Islamic threat to Christian lands and believers. Most crucially, Christian control of the Holy Land, especially the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem, was lost. Spain, though half reclaimed by Christians by 1085, and the Norman recapture of Sicily were reminders of the fragile state of Christianity. Urban could now use Aleccio's plea to bolster political and religious goals. On November 27, 1095, Urban called for a crusade during the Council of Clermont, France. His message, known as the Indulgence, promised that knights defending Christendom would embark on a pilgrimage, absolving them of all sins and securing eternal rewards. In medieval Europe, where Christianity dominated daily life, pilgrimage was common, monasteries were thriving, and sainthood was on the rise. Sin was a major concern, and Urban's promise of spiritual immunity would have strongly appealed to many. The Church could justify the campaign because it was one of liberation with a righteous aim. Urban embarked on a preaching tour through France from 1095 to 96, where he emphasized exaggerated tales of Christian persecution and desecration of holy monuments. Embassies and letters were sent across Christendom, and major churches like those at Limoges, Angers, and Tours became recruitment centers, along with monasteries. Warriors across Europe gathered in 1096, ready to march to Jerusalem. Merchants, though less involved in the First Crusade, became more active by 1200. They aimed to open trade routes to the east and control prosperous centers like Antioch and Jerusalem. Additionally, merchants profited from transporting crusaders across the Mediterranean. From the Second Crusade onward, lucrative contracts were established for shipping armies. Italian trading powers like Venice, Pisa, and Genoa, along with Marseille, became rivals, each vying for control of east-west trade. However, these cities also contributed many religious zealots eager to fight for the Christian cause, not just profit from it. European knights. By the 11th century, medieval Europe had become increasingly militarized. Central governments lacked the resources to control every part of their territories, so local governance fell to large landowners, the barons, who had castles and knights to defend them. Many knights, kings, and princes joined the Crusades, driven by religious beliefs, hopes of a reward in the afterlife, or the ideal of protecting Christian sites from the infidels. It's important to note that the motivation wasn't purely racial or religious hatred towards Muslims. They were seen as enemies because they had taken Christian holy sites, not merely because they were Muslims. As historian M. Bull emphasizes, the First Crusade wasn't about religious fanaticism as we might think today. The clergy's propaganda had little effect, as Muslims were virtually unknown to their audience. Knights also saw the chance to gain wealth, land, or even titles. However, joining the crusade was a costly decision, with equipment and supplies being expensive, and some knights had to sell land to cover these expenses. Monasteries often arranged loans for those who needed them. Another driving force was chivalry, the idea that knights should protect not only their church and God but also the weak and oppressed. Although chivalry was still developing in the 11th century, it was more about upholding a brotherhood of arms, with its moral aspects becoming more prominent in later crusades. Many knights were obligated to join their lord or baron, as it was part of their duty in exchange for land or livelihood. Staying home while their benefactor rode off to the Middle East wasn't an option. Family ties also played a role, with many following fathers or brothers to war, and as crusades continued, it became a tradition within some families for at least one member of each generation to fight for the cause. Citizens. Besides knights, the Crusades needed to appeal to ordinary foot soldiers, archers, squires, and the non-combatants who supported the knights on their campaigns. The ideal of the crusade also resonated with common folk, including women. This is exemplified by the People's Crusade led by the preacher Peter the Hermit, which gathered in 1096 and arrived in Constantinople. However, This army was ambushed and wiped out near Nicaea by the Seljuks on October 21, 1096. By the 13th century, ordinary citizens who joined the Crusades gained practical benefits, such as a delay in feudal service, the speeding up of court cases, exemption from certain taxes, postponement of debt repayments, and even release from excommunication. Crusaders also earned prestige by taking up the cross, symbolized by a badge worn on their tunics or cloaks. Conclusion. As historian Siege Tyerman notes in God's War, 1095 was in many ways the Middle Ages version of 1914, a convergence of moral outrage, personal ambition, political and religious propaganda, peer pressure, societal expectations, and a hunger for adventure. These factors drove people to leave their homes on a perilous journey to an unknown land, where they might find glory or death. The fervor didn't fade after the First Crusade. In fact, the recapture of Jerusalem on July 15, 1099 only inspired more to take the cross. Crusading soon expanded to efforts like liberating Spain from the Moors, the Reconquista, and targeting minority groups in Europe, such as Jews, pagans, and heretics, the Northern Crusades. Knightly orders were established to defend the new territories in the Middle East, and taxes were continually raised to fund the ongoing Crusades, as Muslim and Christian forces experienced victories and defeats, keeping cartographers busy for the next 4 centuries.